Hello family. Welcome to Brandon Tales, your home for gripping African tales. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment. Now sit back and enjoy the drama. I woke that morning with a flutter in my chest, a mixture of excitement and dread. 7 months into our relationship, Leo had texted me at dawn, "Party at Mason's tonight. Be there." My heart leapt, but a slow twist of anxiety settled behind my ribs. He'd never introduced me to his friends before. "They're special," he'd said, dismissing my curiosity. Now he wanted me to meet them. I stood in front of my wardrobe, staring at rows of dresses and tops. Each choice felt monumental. Which one would tell his friends who I was without revealing my doubts? I spent an hour deliberating. A little black dress felt too cliché. A bold yellow jumpsuit felt too risky. In the end, I chose my red top and dark jeans, a balance of confidence and comfort. I curled the braids at the front of my crown, letting them frame my face. I practiced a smile before the mirror. The reflection stared back, hopeful, unsteady. Downstairs, Jola was flipping pancakes in the kitchen. She glanced up at me with a knowing grin. "Do you ever remember to just breathe?" she asked, sliding a plate across the marble countertop. I accepted the pancakes with trembling hands. "I really want this to go well," I admitted, wiping syrup-streaked fingers on a towel. Jola's expression softened. "All men talk about their boys, like there's some secret society. Just be you. If they don't like it, it's their loss." I nodded, but my stomach churned. She handed me a cup of chamomile tea. "Hey, now have this. And text me every time your heartbeat gets too loud." I laughed. "Deal." I sipped and breathed deep, trying to calm my racing thoughts. The entire day seemed to crawl. At work, I could barely focus on the emails stacking in my inbox. During lunch, I scrolled through our past messages. Photos of us at the beach, inside jokes, sweet goodnight texts. Leo always kept a part of his world hidden. Tonight, that secret part would open or slam shut. As dusk settled, I ordered an Uber. 15 minutes later, the black sedan rounded the corner. The driver honked softly. I paid him, swung my bag over my shoulder, and climbed into the back seat. The plush leather smelled faintly of conditioner and air freshener. I replayed potential conversation topics in my head. My internship, a book I was reading, campus life, but each topic felt heavy. "So, heading to a party?" the driver asked, checking his rearview mirror. I forced a smile. "Yeah. Meeting my boyfriend's friends for the first time." He nodded, eyes flickering in the glass. "Good luck. Some folks like to test you." His tone was casual, but his words hung in the air like an omen. I swallowed. "Thanks," I said, fiddling with the zipper on my purse pocket. The car rolled to a stop in front of a sprawling suburban home. Giggling drifted through the open windows. "Here we are," I whispered, opening the door. I stepped onto the porch where red Solo cups lined a long table. Music pulsed through the walls, every beat reverberating under my feet. Leo stood at the door, styled in dark jeans and a crisp shirt, grin broad but eyes unreadable. His friends lounged nearby, Mason leaning against a railing, Rick tossing an empty bottle from hand to hand, Trey perched on a stool with a cigarette dangling between his fingers. "Hey babe," Leo greeted, brushing hair from my face. His fingers lingered a moment too long on my jawline. He introduced me, "Aria, meet my crew." They looked me over, expressions flickering between curiosity and amusement. Rick stood up and offered me his hand, eyes bold. "Nice to finally see you," he said, voice low and teasing. I shook his hand, voice steady. "Thanks for having me." But inside I felt my pulse spiking. Mason handed me a red cup. "Drink?" he asked, tipping it toward me. I shook my head, grateful for the water bottle I'd grabbed earlier. They moved around me like a pack closing in. Trey asked about my major. I answered, trying to sound confident. He shrugged. "Cool." His tone made me feel weighed on a scale. Leo hovered at my side, arms crossed. When I laughed at a joke I barely caught, he didn't join in. Instead, he nodded once, lips pressed together. I realized then that he'd changed around them. Louder, cockier, colder. It stung. I found myself on the deck stairs, watching the group laugh and shout. The night air tasted of cut grass and beer. String lights swayed overhead, cicadas chirping in the distance. I closed my eyes and inhaled, telling myself I belonged here. Leo climbed the stairs beside me. He handed me a bottle of water without a word. I accepted it, voice small. "You okay?" He sighed. "You're very quiet." I tried for a casual shrug. "Just soaking it all in." He stared at me as if he doubted my words. "All right," he said finally, turning away. The laughter from below sharpened like knives. Mason called up, "Hey, you gonna hang with us or what?" Leo descended a few steps. "Go on," he said, voice clipped. "Be social." I smiled, heart pounding, and stood. As I stepped down, I felt someone brush against me. I stumbled forward and Trey caught my arm. His gaze was dismissive. "You good?" I nodded. "Yeah, thanks." We reached the bottom step, and someone shouted a crude joke about clinginess. The circle tightened. They echoed the word, louder each time, "Clingy, clingy, clingy." I laughed reflexively, but the laughter felt hollow. My chest constricted. Leo's eyes flashed annoyance. He lunged forward, voice low, "Chill out." I turned toward him. "Can we step outside?" I whispered urgently. He shook his head. "Not now." My gaze flicked back to his friends, their faces sharp in the electric glow. I opened my mouth, but before I could speak, Leo's hand snapped out. The slap landed across my cheek with a thunderous crack. Time slowed. My cheek burned, stinging hot. Silence blanketed the circle for a heartbeat. Then the laughter came, cruel and triumphant. Phones were already out, cameras flashing. I pressed 2 fingers to my cheek, tasting salt and copper. Leo's jaw clenched as he realized I hadn't flinched, hadn't cried. Instead, I stood rigid, heartbeat loud in my ears. He spat out, "Stop embarrassing me." My voice was steady. "I'm leaving." His sneer widened. "Get out." I bent to scoop my bag, knuckles white. I straightened and looked him in the eye, saw shock, anger, humiliation flicker there. Then I turned and walked away, each step fueled by a strange clarity. The porch light blurred until I burst into the night. The Uber ride back was silent, every red light feeling like a thunderclap in my skull. When I reached my apartment, legs trembling, I stumbled inside and collapsed on my bed. My reflection in the window stared at me, hair tousled, red top stained with water, cheek glowing like a brand. I pressed my palm to the bruise and felt something shift. I closed my eyes, inhaled deeply, and in that breath heard a promise. I left with a red cheek and a plan. In the dim glow of my bedside lamp, I grabbed my journal, its leather cover soft under my fingers. Each blank page felt like a fresh start. I pressed my pen to paper and wrote, "I refuse to be a cautionary tale." I outlined the first steps of my revenge, exposing the truth, holding them accountable, reclaiming my power. I imagined the ripple, his friends questioning their laughter, his supporters doubting their silence. Night surrendered to dawn as I lay awake, mind humming with possibility, fierce determination, and bold, unyielding resilience, unstoppable resolve. The night air outside Mason's house was thick with heat and distant traffic. When I shut the party door behind me, the bass and laughter retreated instantly, replaced by the hum of cicadas. My cheek pulsed where the slap had landed, and each breath tasted like regret. I pressed my back against the weathered wood of the door and slid down until my knees hit the pavement. The gravel dug into the fabric of my jeans, grounding me. Horror mingled with relief, horror at his betrayal, relief that I was out of that den of taunting faces. My phone vibrated in my pocket. Leo's name flashed, 20 missed calls, a string of texts, all unread. They all bore the same tone, frantic, angry, accusing. I pulled the phone out and stared at the screen. A knot tightened in my stomach. For a moment I considered answering. Then I pressed reject, and the phone stilled. I locked it and tucked it away. I looked down the empty street. A single street lamp cast a pale circle on the asphalt. I inhaled, counting to 5. I needed Jola. She was my anchor, my protector. She'd know what to do. I texted, "Home." ASAP. Need you. No reply yet. I slid my key from my bag and called an Uber. The driver pulled up within minutes. I climbed in wordlessly, and he offered me a water bottle. Rough night? He asked gently. I nodded, letting the door close behind me. When I stepped into our apartment, Jola was waiting in the living room, legs curled under her on the couch. She jumped up the moment she saw me. Arya, what happened? Concern etched her face. I lifted my hand. He slapped me. Her mouth dropped open. She reached out to touch my cheek, then withdrew, unsure. Oh my God. She grabbed my arm and helped me sit. Show me. I turned my face. The mark was already crimson, a line of fire. Bruising would bloom later. She fetched cold water and a cloth, pressing it gently to my skin. I'm so sorry, babe. Tears pricked my eyes, but I blinked them back. I wasn't crying for pity. I was planning my next move. I sank into the couch, shoulders trembling. I left right away. I could feel their eyes as I walked away. Jola wrapped an arm around me. They're horrible. None of them stepped in. I shook my head. They laughed. Took videos. It was a show to them. She slammed her fist into her palm. That's it. We can't let this go. I exhaled slowly. I'm not ready for revenge tonight. I just need quiet. She nodded, reaching for her phone. Sleep. I'll call in for you tomorrow. Take the day off. I let her help me to my room. She pressed a moist towel to my cheek again, then tucked me under the covers. I'll be right here. I lay awake listening to the ceiling fan, everywhere a reminder of his hands on my face. Eventually, exhaustion claimed me. Morning light filtered through the blinds. I woke with a dull ache in my jaw and a pounding head. The bruise by my ear swelled. It felt heavy, as though someone had strapped a weight to my skin. Jola stood by the bed, coffee in hand. She offered the mug like an olive branch. Espresso. I sat up and took a slow sip. The bitterness cleared the fog. She studied me. Ready to talk? I nodded, running a hand through my hair. I saw his messages. I pulled my phone from the nightstand. 50 new texts, 2 missed calls, 1 voicemail. Jola looked at the list. Then she hit block on his contact. Don't think about replying. My fingers trembled as I blocked his friends too. Rick, Trey, Mason. Their names disappeared from my feed. My digital world became quiet. I dressed in comfortable clothes, soft leggings and an oversized tee. I slipped on sneakers. Jola handed me a scarf. For the bruise, she said. We moved to the kitchen. She cooked eggs and toast while I stared out the window into our small courtyard. I felt exposed, like the bruise on my face was splashed across my soul. I forced down breakfast. My stomach twisted. Every bite felt heavy with betrayal. Jola watched me. You won't stay silent. I swallowed hard. I don't know what to do next. She pushed a mug of hot tea to me. You'll figure it out. But first, rest. I touched the bruise reflexively. A fire flared inside me. Rest would have to wait. At my desk, I opened my laptop. My homepage loaded with the usual news feed, until I saw it. Event photos from last night's party. Someone had posted a group shot with me and Leo. My red cheek gleamed like a badge. Comments scrolled. Eyes. What happened to her face? Oh, is that a filter? I felt rage and humiliation swirl. I closed the tab, shutting out the outside world. Then I opened a blank document. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. I typed a title. The slap heard around the room. Beneath it, I wrote, "What we tolerate, we enable." I stared at the words. They felt like a challenge. My phone buzzed. A message from my sister. Saw your bruise on Insta. Text me. I replied, don't worry. I'm okay. I hesitated, then added, but I need time. She responded with a heart emoji. I stared at it, feeling both loved and alone. I minimized the window and opened another, the search bar. I typed, self-defense classes near me. Results popped up, dozens of studios offering beginner courses. I glanced at Jola, busy chopping vegetables. She caught my eye. She raised an eyebrow. I nodded. She smiled proud. A notification chimed, Voicemail from Leo. I didn't delete it. Instead, I held my breath, then hit ignore. I returned to my desk and opened my journal. The leather cover was cool under my palm. I wrote, "Last night he slapped me to shame me. I left. They laughed. Today I reclaim my power." I closed the journal and set it aside. I leaned back in my chair and felt the bruise throb. But I also felt something else, determination. I sank back into the couch, phone in hand. I felt the weight of every unanswered question. Why did he wait so long to show me this side? How many times had I ignored small slaps disguised as jokes? Never again. I tapped new message, composing a note to my journal app. Record every detail. Witness me rebuilding. As the cursor blinked, I realized this bruise was more than pain. It was proof that I needed to rewrite my story. I would not be defined by his violence. I would use my words, my actions, and my voice to ensure justice and healing for myself. Tomorrow I will begin the work of showing the world that I survive and I thrive boldly. The morning after I left Mason's house, sunlight crept through my bedroom curtains like an unwelcome guest. My cheek throbbed with every blink, a constant reminder of Leo's betrayal. I lay in bed, phone buzzing on the nightstand, missed calls, unread texts, frantic emojis. I stared at the ceiling, willing my pulse to slow. Finally, I reached for the phone and tapped Leo's name. Instead of answering, I blocked it. Then I blocked Mason, Rick, Trey, anyone connected to that night. My world shut down in a single gesture. I slipped out of bed and padded to the kitchen, where Jola was waiting with coffee. She didn't ask questions, just set the mug before me and brushed my hair back gently. Her silence was support. I sipped the black coffee, bitterness grounding my thoughts. In that moment, I made a vow: I would not be their victim. I would recover, rebuild, and decide my own narrative. Later that day, I Googled self-defense classes near me. A list of studios appeared, each promising empowerment and resilience. My fingers hovered over the sign-up button for a women's Krav Maga beginner course that evening. My heart pounded, not from fear, but excitement I hadn't felt in weeks. I clicked register and watched the confirmation email arrive. That evening, I walked into a narrow studio with mirrored walls. A dozen women practiced basic strikes in loose t-shirts and leggings. The instructor, a tall woman with a fierce ponytail, welcomed me. First-timers line up front. My nerves crackled, but I steadied myself. We began with stance drills, feet shoulder width, knees bent, fists at chin level. My bruise pulsed, but I shifted focus to balance. When the instructor demonstrated a wrist release, my muscles tensed. She grabbed my wrist firmly and twisted gently. I felt power surge as I practiced the motion until it was reflex. The next drill taught us to block punches with our forearms. Each thud against my arm, thud, 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 felt like reclaiming territory. My ribs still ached, but I breathed through each strike. After an hour of punching pads and practicing kicks, sweat beaded on my forehead. I realized I hadn't thought about Leo's slap once. Patting my side, I felt a strange kinship with the women around me, survivors, fighters, reclaimers of agency. The instructor handed me a towel and offered a nod of respect. "Welcome to the club," she said quietly. Back home, I sank onto the couch, muscles trembling. Jola hovered with a smoothie. "How was it?" she asked. I took a long sip, feeling the fruit cool my throat. Intense. Liberating. My voice was soft but certain. My bruise still ached, but it no longer felt like a scar of shame. It was a memory fading at the edges. That night I reopened my journal, its pages blank and waiting. I wrote, "Day 1 of rebuilding me. Learned how to block punches today. Felt powerful." Then I poured out the raw recounting of that slap, every initial shock, each heartbeat, the cold realization that no one in that room cared enough to stop it. I wrote until ink blurred on the page, until my hand cramped. The words were heavy, but with every sentence, I felt pieces of myself reassemble. In the days that followed, I attended 4 more Krav Maga classes, each session chiseling away fear, carving in confidence. I woke early on Saturday to lace up my sneakers and jog through the neighborhood park, watching sunbeams thread through the trees. My reflection in puddles no longer looked fragile. It looked determined. I kept my routine private. Leo's texts had stopped after I blocked him, replaced by rumors swirling on social media. Whispers among mutual friends speculated I'd moved on or was too ashamed to face the truth. Their assumptions fueled me. I refused to give them the satisfaction of knowing I was broken. A week into training, I met Tasha. I was editing a rough draft in my favorite coffee shop when she slid into the seat opposite me. Her camera bag sat on the table like a loyal companion. "I've been following your story," she began, voice low so only I could hear. Her dark eyes were both kind and sharp. "My name's Tasha. I'm a documentary filmmaker. I want to help you tell the truth." My heart thrummed. "Why me?" She smiled with a hint of defiance. "Because your pain resonates with so many who suffer in silence. Because your story could spark change." I studied her, gauging sincerity in the flicker of her gaze. Finally, I nodded. "Let's talk." We spent the afternoon planning. Tasha sketched an outline on napkins, reenactments, survivor interviews, expert commentary on abuse. She wanted to frame the narrative around my experience without naming Leo, focus on the system that enables cruelty. "We'll call it the Slap Society," she said, tapping the napkin. "It doesn't point fingers at a single person. It exposes a culture." I felt a rush of relief. I didn't have to appear on camera if I didn't want to. My story could speak for itself. And yet something inside me trembled at the thought of reliving that night. Tasha, caught my hesitation. "We'll go at your pace," she assured me. "You decide what stays, what goes. I'm here to amplify your voice, not steamroll it." I exhaled, tension easing. "Let's do it." Over coffee mugs and sticky notes, we mapped out our strategy. We'd film reenactments in a rented loft, dim lighting for the slap scene, dramatic slow motion for impact. Then interviews with women who'd faced similar moments. A fateful shove, a cruel joke that escalated. We'd intercut to expert psychologists explaining the gradual nature of abuse. As the sun dipped below the horizon, I realized how far I'd already traveled. 3 weeks ago, I'd crouched by a door, phone blocking my own reflection. Now I sat across from a filmmaker, crafting a project that could reach thousands, maybe millions. My scars would become a catalyst for awareness. Tasha loaded her camera gear into her car. "Early Sunday for location scouting?" she asked. I straightened. "Yes, I'll be there." That night, I slept with my journal by my side. In dreams I heard echoes of laughter, sharp and cruel, but I confronted them. I stood tall, fists raised, and the laughter dissolved into applause. When I woke, the bruise had softened, blending into bruised purple. My resolve, however, felt brand new. Sunday morning arrived clear and bright. I pulled on my leggings and a loose sweater, hair tied back. I met Tasha at the loft, a high-ceilinged room with bare brick walls and scattered light fixtures. The emptiness felt symbolic. We walked through each corner, envisioning camera angles. "Here," I said, pointing to a spot by a large window. "This will be where I wait before he opens the door." She nodded and set up a tripod. For the next hour, we blocked the scene, rehearsing movements and dialogue. When I reenacted my knock on the door, I felt a twist in my stomach. But Tasha guided me. "Soft focus on your face as you realize something's off." Afterward, we sat on the floor, reviewing footage. The playbacks were grainy, raw, honest. The slapping motion felt surreal when viewed on screen. I pressed pause on the frame showing my hand at my cheek, then closed my eyes. I felt no shame, only purpose. By afternoon's end, we had the first rough cut. 30 seconds of reenactment, 15 seconds of my recorded voiceover. It began with a joke. It ended with a crimson cheek and silence in a crowded room. I watched it twice, then realized tears were streaming down my face. Not tears of sorrow, but of release. Tasha ruffled my hair. "This is powerful." I nodded, voice small. "I feel lighter." Driving home, I realized the disappearance had done more than shield me from prying eyes. It had given me space to grow, to train, to reconnect with myself. And now, armed with self-defense skills, a blossoming network of survivors, and a documentary in the making, I emerged from hiding. No one knew where I'd been for 3 weeks. Leo thought I was too hurt to fight. But the real story was that I'd been healing, planning, rising. The open road before me felt wide and promising. And as I turned the key in the ignition, I whispered to myself, they'll know soon enough. We gathered in Tasha's cramped editing suite, monitors aglow and keyboards clacking. The first rough cut of The Slap Society hovered on the central screen. As I pressed play, the reenacted knock sounded on the wooden door again, each echo rippling with memory. I watched my own performance, confused eyes, tentative smile, the moment I recognized something was off. Then came the slap in slow motion, the hand rising and falling with crystalline clarity. My red cheek blossomed in vivid color. Silence settled. Tasha leaned forward, mouth tight. "This is powerful," she whispered. Her voice carried the gravity of conviction. Next to her, Malik, the sound engineer, nodded, eyes shining. "The audio mix is perfect. The slow-mo punch is haunting," he said, tapping his headphones. "These cuts will resonate." We moved through the rest of the footage. Interviews with survivors, expert commentary, emotional reenactments. Each segment built momentum, each voiceover threaded truth through the visuals. Tasha carefully inserted captioning for accessibility, ensuring every voice would be heard. A clinical psychologist recorded insights on the creeping nature of abuse. We wove her calm analysis between visceral reenactments to heighten impact. My heart pounded as we sculpted each scene, but a quiet determination steeled my resolve. To maintain anonymity, we created new social media accounts at slap.society on Instagram and Twitter. No faces, just minimalist branding, black text on white, a solitary red slash through the letter S. We sketched promotional assets, bold typography, stark imagery. Hours were spent crafting 15-second teaser clips showing the slap in stuttered frames. On a whiteboard, we brainstormed hashtags. Hashtag Slap Society, hashtag Abuse Isn't a Joke, hashtag Witness Not Silence. Tasha scheduled the Instagram teaser for midnight, when dramatic content often went viral. I sat beside her, breath held, watching the countdown. At exactly midnight, the post went live. Almost instantly, notifications exploded. Thousands of views in minutes. Comments poured in, "This is me. I never thought it was abuse until now. Thank you for sharing." Retweets cascaded. The digital swell of solidarity felt like warm sunlight breaking through clouds. By sunrise, the teaser had 300,000 views. Momentum built like a storm. People messaged me through the anonymous channels. A university athlete confessed she'd endured similar violence from a teammate. A mother wrote she would show it to her daughter as a lesson in self-respect. Each message was a spark in the darkness. At dawn, we uploaded the full documentary on YouTube under the title, The Slap Society, When Silence Enables Abuse. Our description urged action, join the conversation. Protect survivors. Challenge complacency. Within hours, views soared past 40,000. By noon, 300,000. I was chopping vegetables when Tasha's text arrived. 300K views. We're trending at number 2. I dropped the knife, knees weak with adrenaline. The comments section was alive with empathy and indignation. One user wrote, "I showed this to my brother. He hadn't realized what he did was wrong." Another, "This should be required viewing in schools." A few skeptics questioned authenticity, but most responses were compassionate. An advocate tagged a local radio station, prompting a morning news segment on the viral doc and a panel discussion about bystander responsibility. Then came the direct messages. My new @slap.society account received messages from a handful of Leo's friends. Rick wrote, "This is wild. I don't know if this is about me, but I feel targeted." Trey messaged, "I'm so ashamed I recorded it instead of helping you. I deleted the clip." Mason sent, "We need to talk. Who are you?" Each ping felt like a twig snapping underfoot. The forest of lies was cracking. I forwarded each message to Tasha. She drafted calm replies. "Reflect on your actions. Abuse thrives in silence." We refused personal shaming. Our mission was cultural change. Each response was a step toward accountability, not vengeance. Word spread. Campus newspapers ran headlines, "Anonymous Doc exposes culture of mockery." Blog posts debated whether bystander humor enabled violence. A campus radio program invited Tasha to discuss online anonymity and survivor empowerment. I listened from my self-defense studio between classes, heart pounding with pride. That evening, Jola joined our celebration dinner. Tasha ordered sushi, Malik brought sparkling water. We toasted quietly to courage, truth, and collective healing. Jola squeezed my hand. "You've ignited a movement." I smiled through tears of relief. But not everyone embraced our message. Late that night, I saw Leo's Instagram stories. A shaky selfie, voice trembling. Everyone's watching some clip of a girl crying. No context. His story vanished within minutes, but screenshots lived on, fueling online debate. His friends divided. Some defended him, others questioned their complicity. A week later, a local community center invited me to speak at a panel on digital advocacy. I agreed, choosing the pseudonym Aria W. I prepared bullet points: the power of anonymity, storytelling as activism, the duty of witnesses. On the day, I stood at a microphone in a packed auditorium. I spoke of the slap, the laughter, the ripple effect of courage. The audience was rapt, nodding and taking notes. Afterward, a student with tears in her eyes hugged me. "I was silenced for years. Your film gave me strength." I choked back emotion. That moment crystallized why I'd chosen this path. Later, Tasha and I reviewed analytics. Average watch time 8 minutes, 65% retention at the climax. Subscriber count jumped 10,000 overnight. The documentary had transcended excuses and compelled viewers to confront their own complacency. Throughout, I carried no malice. Leo's friend group sent more messages, some seeking forgiveness, others defensive. I posted one final social media update: "Silence harms everyone. Speak up. Change begins with you." Then I signed out. Coverage quickly spread. Prominent bloggers praised the Slap Society as a social reckoning, and newspapers published editorials on bystander responsibility. A radio station devoted an hour to the documentary, with callers sharing experiences. I listened, heart racing as voices recounted incidents I thought were hidden. Tasha and I immediately planned the next phase. We outlined a podcast featuring survivor testimonials, legal experts, and mental health advocates. We drafted outreach emails to campus organizations, groups, and the self-defense studio where I trained. Each sent message sharpened my purpose. One afternoon, I met Jola at our cafe. I recounted the flood of reactions, messages from Leo's friends, and the broader conversation ignited. She reached across the table, eyes shining. "You transformed pain into power," she said. I nodded, feeling peace amid the whirlwind. Meanwhile, rumors reached me that Rick, Trey, and Mason had convened to decide whether to issue a public apology. Is it enough? Will she accept? Their indecision, relayed by acquaintances, testified to our impact. Through it all, I maintained routine: self-defense classes, documentary sessions, nightly journal entries. My bruise had faded, but my resolve remained vivid. At our next edit meeting, Tasha unveiled a teaser urging viewers to share solidarity stories. I watched tears gather and knew we were building a movement. By month's end, the Slap Society surpassed 1 million views. Sponsors approached Tasha about a full series, but I focused on supporting survivors online, answering messages like, "How do I get help?" Each reply felt like reaching someone who once trembled in silence, and in those moments, I found the true measure of my revenge. Students at my university formed support groups inspired by the documentary, organizing workshops and campaigns to promote respectful behavior. The first time I realized Leo had seen the Slap Society, I was waiting outside the campus auditorium for a panel discussion to begin. My heart fluttered with nerves. I pressed my hand to the bruise on my cheek, now faded to a dull purple. I was about to speak on digital advocacy and bystander responsibility when my phone buzzed. A direct message from an anonymous account blinked on my screen. They know it's about them. My breath caught. I slid my thumb across the screen to unlock, revealing more messages forwarded to our anonymous account. Screenshots of Leo's Instagram stories showing a shaky selfie. His voice trembled as he said, "Everyone's talking about some girl crying over a slap. They don't know what happened before." Underneath, his caption read, "No context. Stop believing everything you see." The post vanished within minutes, but the screenshots lived on. I stepped inside the auditorium with Jola by my side. The buzz among the audience was electric. Students whispered, glancing at me with newfound respect or pity, I couldn't tell which. I climbed the stage steps, took the microphone, and forced a steady smile. "Thank you," I began, voice unwavering. "When you see a moment of violence, you can't look away. Silence and laughter enable abuse." My words carried weight. As I spoke, I saw Rory, one of Leo's closest friends, in the front row, head bowed, guilt etched on his face. After the discussion, a small group approached me. A campus reporter held out a recorder. "Aria, or Slap Society, how do you respond to his claims?" she asked. I inhaled and answered, "The truth stands on its own. If there's context missing, that context is his silence before the slap." I held my ground. Word spread fast. By evening, the hashtag Slap Society trended on campus Twitter. Someone spray-painted the words in bold black letters on a brick wall near the student center. Jola showed me a photo. My chest swelled. A message was impossible to ignore. Meanwhile, Leo's world was unraveling. I learned through mutual acquaintances that sponsors had pulled funding from his fledgling YouTube channel. Advertisers didn't want to be associated with controversy. His subscriber count plateaued and dropped. At the basketball game that weekend, players sat out his promotional video, refusing to appear alongside him. I walked across the quad and felt eyes on me. Whispers trailed behind, "That's her. The slap girl." An acquaintance who once laughed with me in chemistry lab offered a nod of solidarity. I managed a small wave. That night, during a late-night edit session with Tasha, my phone pinged. Netflix had sent a direct message through her account. "We're interested in licensing the Slap Society. Please contact us." I stared at the notification, disbelief and triumph mingling in my chest. Tasha grinned. "Looks like this is going places." Over the next week, I balanced filming interviews for a potential series while continuing my self-defense training. The empowerment felt intoxicating. At the dojang, women high-fived as I practiced kicks. Each punch and block reinforced what was at stake. One afternoon, I watched online as Leo posted another story. His voice was raw. "I'm hurt that she went to the world before talking to me." But I was wrong. His message seemed desperate and unconvincing. Comments flooded in. An apology? Finally. A little too late. Can we trust him? The line between sympathy and scorn blurred. On campus, I received invitations to speak at community events. A local high school asked me to address students on digital safety and consent. A women's shelter requested a private screening for their clients. My voice, once unheard, became a beacon for those seeking validation and strength. Yet throughout this whirlwind, I maintained anonymity. I spoke as Aria W., not revealing my last name. I wanted the focus to remain on the issue, not on my identity. When the local news interviewed me, they blurred my face and changed my voice. I spoke clearly about the culture of mockery that precedes violence. Meanwhile, Leo retreated into silence. I heard he stopped attending classes regularly, skipping friends' gatherings. The vibrant, cocky guy I knew was replaced by one haunted by regret and public shaming. I felt no joy in his downfall. It was a necessary consequence of his actions, of the cruelty he had unleashed. 2 months after the film's release, I sat on a dais at a symposium on gender-based violence. I wore a simple black dress and confidence like armor. As panelists spoke, I reviewed statistics on bystander intervention and the long-term impacts of relational aggression. When it was my turn, I shared my journey. One slap, one decision to disappear, and one documentary that changed everything. Afterward, a psychologist approached me. "Your story will help change policies on campus," she said, asking for a meeting to draft recommendations. Jola took notes as we talked strategy for a student-led initiative integrating self-defense training into orientation programs. By spring semester, the self-defense studio saw record enrollment. Faculty adopted disclaimer cards, reminding students to intervene. Campus security distributed a pamphlet titled, "Witness, Don't Ignore." Late one evening, I found myself scrolling through Leo's old Instagram feed, full of snapshots from before the incident. I paused on a photo of us smiling at a bookstore cafe, carefree. A pang of nostalgia struck me, but it was fleeting. This Leo belonged to another era, one where ignorance justified cruelty. The new Leo, if he existed, would have to confront the fallout of his actions. That realization echoed in my mind when I received an email titled, "Closure," from a public relations firm representing Leo's family. They wanted to arrange a mediated conversation, potentially a public apology. I forwarded it to Tasha. We discussed whether to engage. I wrote back curtly, "No comment." In early summer, the university's dean of students emailed me, inviting me to collaborate on a scholarship fund for women leaders. She proposed matching student donations to fuel a SLAP Society Leadership Scholarship and personal empowerment. Jola and I spent late evenings creating digital posters, writing grant proposals, and setting up an online portal. Our slogan, "From Silence to Scholarship," was emblazoned on every asset. Within weeks, we raised double our target, enabling us to establish a scholarship awarded annually to 3 rising advocates in social justice initiatives. Presenting the first scholarship certificates at convocation, I saw recipients' proud smiles mirrored in my own heart. Meanwhile, media interest continued to swell. A local NPR affiliate invited me for an in-depth interview about survivor storytelling. A national women's magazine featured our work in a special issue on campus activism. Each opportunity felt surreal, a reminder that one act of courage, my decision to speak out, could reverberate far beyond a college quad. At home, Jola and I toasted successes with homemade meals, laughing at how drastically our lives had changed. Late at night, I returned to my journal, reflecting on how a single moment of violence had catalyzed community, scholarship, and solidarity. The ripple was stronger than I ever imagined. Months passed. My bruise had long since healed, the emotional scars softened with time and purpose. Leo faded from the viral spotlight, replaced by the next trending story. But the SLAP Society endured as a touchstone in conversations about abuse and accountability. Sometimes, late at night, I thought of Leo. I wondered if he ever truly understood what his SLAP represented. But I never looked back. My focus remained on forging new pathways for survivors, one story at a time. The ripple of one SLAP had become a wave of change, and I was determined to ride it forward. I sat in the audience at the International Women's Leadership Summit, the hall buzzing with anticipation. Ornate chandeliers dripped crystal light across polished marble floors. Delegates in business suits and traditional attire filled every seat, their murmurs rippling through the air like waves. I sat tall in my seat, adjusting the microphone clipped to my lapel, an unthinkable difference from the girl who'd cowered at a door just months ago. 6 months had passed since the SLAP Society dropped on YouTube. In that time, my life transformed from silent survivor to outspoken advocate. I'd flown coast to coast, speaking at universities, women's conferences, even corporate boardrooms, where executives once joked about harmless pranks, now leaned forward, asking how to recognize and prevent abuse in their own ranks. Tonight, I was a panelist alongside 3 renowned activists. When the moderator introduced me, she turned personal trauma into a movement that's reshaping how we talk about bystander responsibility. The audience burst into applause. My pulse thundered as I rose. For an instant, I remembered the bruised girl in a red top, stumbling away from Mason's house party. Now, I stood under spotlight, voice steady. "Thank you," I began. Revenge is often pictured as bitter or violent. But mine was surgical. I exposed a culture of cruelty, not with fists, but with truth. I weaponized storytelling, community, and accountability. I saw nods in the front row. When we bring hidden violence into the light, it weakens the abuser more than any retaliation ever could. After the panel, a line formed at the stage exit: survivors, allies, even skeptics who came to learn. A law student said, "I've argued cases without really understanding consent. Now I see how everyday behavior crosses lines." A nurse confessed she'd dismissed a patient's bruises. Hearing our story compelled her to act differently. Each conversation affirmed that my quiet, precise strategy had ripple effects I could scarcely imagine. Backstage, Tasha handed me a note. Netflix wanted to expand The Slap Society into a full series, delving into parallel stories of survivors worldwide. Jola, the roommate who first forced me to block Leo, hugged me so tightly I could barely breathe. "We did it," she whispered, tears in her eyes. We clinked glasses of sparkling water, laughter echoing down the corridor. All the while, Leo's legend unraveled. Friends who once shrugged off his cruelty now recoiled at the meme-laden spray paint reading Slap Society on campus walls. His small Instagram channel lay silent. Sponsors dropped him without comment. Rumors circulated that he transferred to a distant school, hoping to escape, but everywhere he turned, online or off, his actions followed him like a ghost. One afternoon, I received an invitation to testify before the state legislature's Committee on Domestic Violence Prevention. I spent days drafting testimony, calls for mandatory bystander training in schools, for anonymous reporting hotlines, for funding survivor scholarships. On the hearing day, I donned a tailored suit, the armor of an advocate, and stood at a lectern under the cold gaze of lawmakers. Cameras rolled as I spoke. Abuse thrives in darkness, in laughter at someone's cost. We must shine light on every cruel joke, every unspoken threat. My story isn't unique. It's an alarm bell. Afterward, a state senator, eyes shining, stepped forward. "Your courage moved me," he said. "I will introduce a bill requiring funding for self-defense classes and survivor resources on every campus." I shook his hand amid applause, proof that measured truth can topple more than anger ever could. Returning to my hotel room that evening, I found a single white rose on the pillow, a note pinned beneath: "We see you. Thank you." No signature. My chest tightened. This anonymous gesture, from a stranger or a survivor, carried more weight than any public award. It reminded me that my choices had lifted others from silence. Over the next weeks, my inbox flooded with emails, survivors offering thanks, activists eager to volunteer, campus groups requesting screenings of The Slap Society. I printed favorite messages onto colored paper and pinned them to my vision board. I left him, I reported it, I stopped laughing. Each note was a testament to lives reclaimed. That December, we held the inaugural Slap Society Leadership Scholarship Ceremony. 3 recipients: an art student healing through painting, an engineering major founding a campus safe house, and a journalism underclassman sharing survivor stories, stood to receive awards. Their speeches were raw and brilliant. One spoke of color therapy, another of community building, the third of words as lifelines. Watching them, I realized how far we'd come from that first viral short film. Then came December 12th, the anniversary of the slap. Tasha and I returned to Mason's renovated home, now a community venue. We arranged chairs in a circle on the lawn, lit candles in the shape of an S, and invited survivors and allies to share triumphs. Over soft music, strangers who once hid their pain spoke aloud: "I'm free, I'm safe, I'm heard." When my turn came, I simply said, "Tonight we celebrate every step from silence to strength." The applause felt like healing. After the gathering wound down, I walked to the old front door, repainted white, its frame pristine. I laid my palm against the wood, imagining the girl who once trembled on the other side. I whispered, "This door is just wood. I hold the key." I stepped back into the circle, where laughter, tears, and music blended into a symphony of resilience. That night, I lay awake, exhaustion and elation entwined. The phone beside me was quiet, no messages from Leo, no demands for attention. And I knew, my revenge had never been to destroy a person, but to dismantle an entire system of silence and mockery. He tried to mute me. Instead, I amplified thousands of voices. He wanted to silence me. I turned up the volume and finally walked away. The end. Love the story? Smash that like button, hit subscribe, and become part of the Brandon Tales family. Your support helps us bring more powerful African tales to life. Thanks for watching. We can't wait to share the next one with you. See you soon.